What if the secret to surviving your high-stress job was actually 2,000 years old? I'm not talking about quitting everything and moving to the mountains. I'm talking about something far more practical and surprisingly powerful. In a world where deadlines never stop, inboxes never sleep, and expectations seem to multiply overnight, it's no wonder workplace stress is at an all-time high. I've been there, burned out, overwhelmed, constantly trying to stay afloat while juggling meetings, emails, and the quiet fear of not doing enough. But then I discovered something ancient, and it changed how I show up to work every single day. In this video, I'm going to share how Stoic philosophy, yes, the kind practiced by emperors and warriors, can become your secret weapon against modern workplace stress. You'll learn how to face pressure with clarity, handle challenges without spiraling, and stay grounded no matter what chaos swirls around you. Because while the modern office may be digital and fast-paced, the human mind still responds best to timeless wisdom. And trust me, once you start applying Stoicism in your daily routine, everything begins to shift. Your focus sharpens, your anxiety softens, and your sense of control slowly returns. So let's begin with the root of the problem. Why is stress rising so fast in the modern workplace? And more importantly, what can we do about it? Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Daily Stoic Habits, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this journey. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly at ease at work? Not just not busy, but genuinely calm, focused, and at peace with what you were doing. For a lot of us, that feeling is rare, maybe even non-existent. These days, the modern workplace feels more like a pressure cooker than a productive space. It demands speed, availability, and perfection. And if you don't keep up, you fall behind. Simple as that. At least that's what we're made to believe. I've been in that exact space, glued to my screen, juggling meetings, drowning in emails, constantly wondering if I'm doing enough, if I am enough. It doesn't matter whether you're working a corporate job, freelancing from home, or running your own business, the stress shows up all the same. Sometimes it creeps in quietly. Other times, it hits like a wave. But either way, it's always there. A recent study by the American Psychological Association revealed something staggering. 77% of employees report experiencing work-related stress at least once a week. And many, myself included, feel it far more often than that. So what's going on? Why, in a world with more convenience and technology than ever before, do we feel more mentally drained than generations before us? Let's break it down. First, there's the always-on culture. Technology was supposed to make work easier. Instead, it's made it endless. Emails don't sleep. Slack messages ding at midnight. Zoom meetings eat up lunch hours. We're expected to respond quickly, stay updated constantly, and multitask endlessly. Rest isn't just undervalued, it's practically seen as laziness. Then there's the productivity obsession. Everywhere we turn, we're hit with messages about hustling harder, doing more, pushing further. Social media glorifies 5 a.m. routines and 80-hour work weeks. Burnout is rebranded as dedication, and if you're not grinding, it feels like you're falling behind. Let's not forget the uncertainty factor, something that skyrocketed during the pandemic. Job insecurity, health concerns, remote work challenges, isolation. Suddenly, we were working from our bedrooms, kitchens, even closets. The lines between home and office blurred into one never-ending day. For many, the stress wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. And it's not just about external pressures. Work stress taps into deeper internal fears. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of being replaceable, the fear of failing. These aren't just workplace concerns, they're human concerns. And when they get triggered over and over, day after day, they don't just make us tired, they make us feel powerless. And here's where the problem deepens. Because when stress becomes our default state, we stop noticing how much it's costing us. We lose focus. We make impulsive decisions. We feel emotionally reactive, easily irritated, and mentally foggy. Our bodies tense up. Sleep becomes shallow. We start snapping at people we care about. Eventually, we lose sight of what really matters, not just at work, but in life. But here's what I've learned, and what I wish someone had told me earlier. Stress isn't the enemy. Let me say that again. Stress is not the enemy. The real issue is how we respond to stress. And most of us were never taught how to do that well. We were taught to work hard, to keep pushing, to meet deadlines, to make everyone happy. But nobody taught us how to pause, reflect, and reset. No one gave us the tools to stay mentally clear in a world full of noise. That's where Stoicism comes in. When I first discovered Stoic philosophy, it felt like stumbling upon a forgotten user manual for the human mind. It didn't offer quick fixes or shallow motivation. It gave me something deeper, perspective. The Stoics lived in a world full of chaos, uncertainty, and pressure, not so different from ours. But instead of trying to control the world, they focused on mastering themselves. And that's what changed everything for me. They believed that while we can't always change our circumstances, we can always change our attitude. We can choose how to interpret events. We can choose how to respond. We can choose where to place our attention. That kind of mental clarity, it's not just philosophical, it's practical. It's how I stopped reacting to every stressful email like it was an emergency. It's how I stopped chasing the illusion of being caught up and started living more deliberately. It's how I reclaimed my mornings, reset my mindset, and started finding calm even during chaos. So if you're someone who's feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or just plain tired, I want you to know you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not stuck. You don't have to escape your job or change your entire life to feel better. Sometimes the biggest shift starts inside. And now that's exactly what we're going to explore together. In the next section, I'll walk you through the core of Stoicism, what it really is, how it works, and why this 2,000-year-old philosophy might just be the most modern tool you'll ever use. But before we get there, take a moment, take a breath, and ask yourself, what if the most powerful tool to manage your stress, sharpen your focus, and reclaim your peace was born over 2,000 years ago? That's exactly what happened to me. In the middle of one of the busiest, most overwhelming seasons of my life, I stumbled upon a quote by Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, who also happened to be the Emperor of Rome. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." At first it sounded poetic, maybe even idealistic, but the more I read, the more it struck a deep chord in me. Because in that one sentence was the very thing I was missing. The ability to respond, not just react. To pause, to choose, to regain control, not over everything, but over myself. And that, at its heart, is what Stoicism is all about. So let me break it down, without the fluff, without the academic jargon, just what you and I need to know to actually use it in our modern lives. What is Stoicism? Really, Stoicism is a school of philosophy that originated in ancient Greece around the 3rd century BCE. Its most well-known thinkers, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. But here's the kicker. Stoicism wasn't meant for ivory towers or lecture halls. It was a philosophy built for real life, for the battlefield, for the marketplace, for emperors and slaves alike. It's not about suppressing your emotions or becoming a robot. It's about learning how to live with clarity, courage, and calm, especially when life gets messy. At its core, Stoicism teaches a radical yet simple idea. There are things you can control, and there are things you can't. Focus only on the first. That sounds obvious, right? But let's be honest. How much of our stress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable? We obsess over what people think of us. We replay conversations we can't change. We worry about outcomes we can't predict. We fixate on the future, regret the past, and forget to show up for the one place we actually have power, the present moment. And that's exactly where Stoicism shines. The 3 pillars of Stoic thinking. If I could boil down what Stoicism has taught me into 3 core ideas, it would be these. Control what you can, accept what you can't. The Stoics call this the dichotomy of control. It's not passive resignation. It's active wisdom. When you stop wasting energy on what's outside your hands, you unlock the power to transform what is within your reach, your choices, your actions, your perspective. Live according to nature. This doesn't mean hugging trees or living in a cave. It means living in alignment with who you truly are, using reason, acting with virtue, and flowing with the reality of the world instead of resisting it. The Stoics believed nature was orderly and rational, and that we are too when we're at our best. Virtue is the highest good. To the Stoics, living well wasn't about status, wealth, or praise. It was about character, integrity, courage, justice, wisdom. In other words, it's not what happens to you that defines you. It's how you show up in response. Every situation is a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and better. Why it still works, especially. Now you might be wondering, why should I care about the thoughts of some Roman emperor or a Greek slave? Because human nature hasn't changed. Yes, we live in a world of smartphones and streaming and remote work and self-driving cars. But at the end of the day, we still deal with fear, anger, pressure, doubt. The faces have changed. But the emotions? They're the same. The modern workplace might look different from the ancient Roman Senate, but the internal struggles, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the self-criticism, are all too familiar. And that's why Stoicism still works. It gives us a framework, a compass, a quiet strength we can carry into any meeting, any email, any confrontation. It reminds us that even when everything around us feels out of control, we don't have to be. Stoicism is a practice, not a belief. This isn't about slapping a quote on your wall and moving on. Stoicism is a daily discipline. It's in the way you pause before reacting to a rude coworker. It's in the way you breathe through the tension instead of snapping. It's in the way you choose to see a setback not as a curse, but as training. The Stoics journaled. They meditated. They visualized hardships before they happened, so they could meet them with grace when they did. They didn't avoid discomfort. They prepared for it, they welcomed it. And today you and I can do the same. We can wake up and remind ourselves what's truly in our control. We can reflect each night on how we showed up and how we can improve. We can use challenges not as excuses to quit, but as invitations to grow. That's what Stoicism taught me. Not how to escape life's chaos, but how to face it with calm. So now that we've laid the foundation, here's what we'll explore next. In the upcoming section, I'll walk you through the specific Stoic principles I use to handle stress at work, step by step. We'll go beyond the theory and into real-life practices you can start using today, because this isn't just a philosophy, it's a way of life. And once you begin living it, one small shift at a time, you'll notice something remarkable. Work won't feel lighter, but you will be stronger. We've explored what Stoicism is, where it came from, and why it still matters. But now comes the real question. How do I actually use this in the middle of a stressful workday? Because let's face it, reading about philosophy is one thing. Living it while your inbox explodes, your manager pings you during lunch, and your calendar looks like a battlefield? That's another story entirely. But this is where Stoicism shines the most. Not in theory, but in action. Over time, I've found a few Stoic principles that aren't just helpful, they're essential. These ideas don't take years to master. You don't need a quiet monastery. You need just a few moments of awareness and the willingness to respond differently. So let's break them down. Not as abstract ideas, but as real, usable tools. Ones I use daily to stay calm, clear, and grounded at work. Acceptance. Let go of what you can't control. This is the bedrock of Stoicism. The Stoics taught that one of the biggest sources of human suffering is trying to control what's out of our hands. Think about it. How much of your daily stress comes from things like your boss's unpredictable mood, a client changing the scope at the last minute, that one coworker who never pulls their weight, a project getting delayed because someone else dropped the ball? None of those are fully within your control, yet we spend hours mentally wrestling with them. wishing they were different, feeling anxious and frustrated. Here's what the Stoics would say. Don't fight the storm, adjust your sails. Instead of resisting reality, acknowledge it. Accept that it's happening. And then ask yourself, what's the next best move I can make given what is? That simple shift from resistance to acceptance frees up massive mental energy. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're choosing to focus on what actually leads to progress. Control what you can. Own your thoughts, choices, and effort. If there's one thing you always control, it's how you show up, your mindset, your preparation, your tone in a meeting, your effort on a task, your decision to take a breath before replying to a frustrating email. That's power, and it's the kind of power no one can take away from you. One of my favorite Stoic exercises is something Epictetus taught. Before every action, pause and ask, is this within my control? If it is, go all in. If it isn't, let it go. At work, that could mean preparing thoroughly for a presentation, even if you don't control the outcome. It could mean setting clear boundaries with your time, even if others resist. It could mean giving your best on a team project, even if others are underperforming. Focus on what you can influence. That's where your peace lives. Emotional regulation. Master the space between stimulus and response. Work brings up emotions. Of course it does. We're human. Frustration, anger, anxiety, impatience, they all arise, sometimes without warning. And when we're not aware, we let those emotions run the show. But here's what the Stoics knew. You are not your emotions. You are the observer of them. That means you can feel frustration without snapping. You can feel anxiety without spiraling. You can feel pressure without panicking. How? By creating space. The Stoics practice something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. In simple terms, they imagined the worst-case scenario ahead of time. Why? So when difficulty arrived, they were ready. You can use the same mindset. Before a high-stakes meeting, ask, what might go wrong? How would the best version of me handle it? This shifts your brain from emotional reactivity to calm readiness. Another tool? Breath. Seriously. Just pausing to take 3 deep breaths before replying to a tense message can save you from hours of regret. Mastering that space between stimulus and response isn't easy, but it's a Stoic superpower. Daily reflection. Learn from the day without judging yourself. Seneca, the great Roman Stoic, ended each day with a ritual, reviewing how he behaved, where he acted wisely, where he fell short. But here's the key. He did it without self-loathing. He was curious, not critical. This has been one of the most life-changing Stoic practices for me. Each evening I take 5 minutes and ask, what did I do well today? When did I lose my temper or get reactive? What situation stressed me out, and how can I respond better next time? No shame, no guilt, just honest reflection. When you approach your day like this, each one becomes a lesson. And over time, those small lessons compound into serious growth. Live with purpose. Let virtue be your North Star. Here's the truth. Most stress at work comes from chasing outcomes. Praise, promotion, validation, perfection. But Stoicism flips the script. It says, don't chase results. Chase character. Ask yourself, am I being honest? Am I acting with courage? Am I treating others fairly? Am I showing discipline and patience? That's what the Stoics call living in accordance with virtue. And ironically, when you stop obsessing over outcomes and start showing up with integrity, the results often follow. But even if they don't, you walk away with self-respect. And that, to me, is worth more than any performance review. Putting it all together. None of these practices are about being perfect. They're about being present, deliberate, centered, even when things around you are loud, messy, or uncertain. When you combine acceptance with control, when you learn to regulate emotions instead of reacting, when you reflect without judgment and act with virtue, you begin to experience a kind of inner calm that can't be shaken by someone else's bad mood or a last-minute deadline. You've learned the core principles. You've heard the philosophy. But now comes the part that matters most. How do I actually apply Stoicism today in my messy, noisy, deadline-packed work life? Because knowing is one thing. Living it, that's the challenge. The beauty of Stoicism isn't in grand, heroic acts. It's in the small, repeatable choices we make daily, quietly, often unnoticed. And that's exactly where transformation happens. I want to walk you through a few simple yet powerful practices that I've built into my routine, rituals that keep me steady when work gets wild, that reset my mindset when it starts to spiral, and that help me stay true to my values even in the most stressful moments. These practices don't require hours. They don't require perfect conditions. They just require intention. Start your day with stillness, morning meditation, 5 to 10 minutes. You don't need a mountain or a monastery. You just need a chair, a quiet corner, and a few minutes to connect with yourself before the world starts pulling at you. Every morning before I check email, before I touch my phone, I sit down and breathe. That's it. I give myself space to be before I have to do. Sometimes I repeat a Stoic phrase. Today I will face interruption, ingratitude, arrogance, and impatience. But none of it is personal. Sometimes I visualize my day, the meetings, the conversations, the surprises, and how I want to respond to each, not just react. This is what Marcus Aurelius did. It's what Seneca did, and it's what you can do too. Your first thoughts set the tone, so make them yours, not your inboxes. 2. Journaling like a Stoic, a mindset recalibration tool. You've heard of journaling, but this isn't about dumping feelings or writing poems. It's about clarity. I use my journal like a Stoic compass, a short, focused check-in. Just a few questions. What's outside my control today? What matters most today? Where am I likely to lose my cool, and how can I prepare for it? How do I want to show up regardless of outcome? This isn't self-therapy, it's self-leadership. Writing forces you to slow down your thinking, to see your blind spots, to remind yourself, I have choices, even in chaos. 5 minutes, that's all it takes. But it can reshape your entire day. Work with boundaries, not guilt. One of the biggest stressors I used to face wasn't the work itself. It was the feeling that I should always be working. And that guilt? It's exhausting. Stoicism taught me that discipline isn't about always doing more. It's about knowing when to stop. So now I set boundaries and I honor them. I define my top 3 priorities for the day. Once those are done, I allow myself to be done. I schedule deep work blocks where I turn off notifications and give full focus to one task. I protect my evenings not with rigidity, but with purpose, because a rested mind is a productive mind, and when guilt shows up, I ask myself, would a Stoic feel bad for resting after doing their best? Not a chance. They'd rest. So I rest, too. Handle triggers with Stoic awareness. Let's be honest, every job has those moments. A snide comment, a micromanaging supervisor, a sudden deadline, a tech failure 5 minutes before a presentation. You can't stop these things, but you can change your relationship with them. Here's what I do when I feel triggered. First, I pause. Even just one breath helps. Then I mentally label what I'm feeling: frustration, fear, disappointment. Next, I ask, what story am I telling myself right now? Is it, they don't respect me, or I'm going to fail? Finally, I reframe. Is this actually within my control? If yes, what can I do calmly? If not, how can I release it? This process doesn't erase the stress, but it stops it from hijacking my mind. And every time I do it, I strengthen my emotional resilience muscle. That's real Stoic training, in real time. End the day with reflection, not regret. Most people end their day by zoning out in front of a screen or collapsing into bed with racing thoughts. But the Stoics ended their day by looking inward. I do the same, just 5 quiet minutes before bed. Where did I act wisely today? Where did I get reactive or distracted? What lesson did this day teach me? This isn't about judging yourself. It's about understanding yourself, with honesty, with compassion, with a desire to grow. And here's the magic. When you end your day with reflection, you begin the next day with intention. These habits stack over time. Each of these practices, on their own, seems small. A pause, a sentence in a journal, a breath before replying, a gentle review before sleep. But day after day they stack, they build, they shift your inner life. You start noticing when you're falling into old patterns. You become less reactive, more grounded. You carry yourself with calm even when everything else is noisy. You're not perfect, but you're present, and that's more than enough. Ready for more? In the final part of this journey, we'll take a step back and look at the big picture. We'll explore what it really means to live a more stoic life, not just at work, but everywhere. We'll talk about what happens when this isn't just a set of tools you use, but a mindset you embody. Let me ask you something. Have you ever paused, really paused, and asked, what kind of person am I becoming? Through the way I work, the way I respond, the way I live? Because at the end of the day, no matter how many emails we send, no matter how full our calendars get, what really matters is not how much we got done, but who we became in the process, and that's the heart of Stoicism. It's not just a set of tricks to calm your nerves or fix your schedule. It's a way of becoming someone you're proud of, day by day, decision by decision. Stoicism is a lifestyle, not a quick fix. Maybe you started this journey looking for ways to manage stress at work. And that's good. Necessary even. But Stoicism doesn't stop at the office door. It shows up in the way you speak to a family member after a long day, in how you hold yourself when plans fall apart, in whether you chase validation or stay true to your values, in how you live when no one's watching. The Stoics didn't compartmentalize. Marcus Aurelius didn't say, I'll be wise at work and impulsive at home. Epictetus didn't say, I'll reflect during meetings but panic in traffic. No, their philosophy was whole, integrated, woven into every hour of life, and you can live that way too. It's about identity, not just behavior. This journey isn't about doing stoic things. It's about becoming a stoic person. That doesn't mean wearing a toga or quoting Latin. It means choosing to be calm when others are frantic, grounded when life feels unstable, wise when emotions rise, brave when the path is unclear, kind when the world is cold. These are not goals for the distant future. These are muscles you can train, today, here, now, with every pause before you speak, with every time you choose reflection over reaction, with every moment you act from principle, not impulse. You're becoming the person Stoicism was meant to shape. Someone strong, yet soft. Clear yet humble, steady yet fully alive. You'll still fall short, and that's part of the practice. Here's something the Stoics knew deeply. You won't get it right every time. You'll lose your cool. You'll stress about things beyond your control. You'll forget to pause. You'll react. You'll fall short of your own standards. And that's okay. Because Stoicism isn't about perfection. It's about the pursuit of virtue. About getting up one more time than you fall. About learning, adjusting, refining. Even Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote pages and pages reminding himself to stay patient, to let go of pride, to remain present. He wasn't writing for others. He was writing for himself. Because he knew wisdom isn't a destination. It's a discipline. What changes when you live this way? Everything. Work doesn't get easier, but it feels lighter. Difficult people don't disappear, but they lose their power over your peace. Deadlines still come, but you meet them with focus, not frenzy. Failures still happen, but you learn from them instead of drowning in them. More importantly, you gain something rare, a quiet confidence that says, no matter what happens around me, I know who I am inside. And that changes how you walk through the world. You become someone others look to, not because you're flashy, but because you're anchored. Someone people trust. Someone who leads, not with noise, but with presence. You're not alone on this path. The truth is, this journey isn't always easy. Sometimes it's lonely to take the high road. Sometimes it's hard to pause when everyone else is reacting. Sometimes it feels like the world rewards the loudest voice, not the wisest one. But here's what helps. Remember that you're not alone. You're walking a path that has been walked for thousands of years by philosophers, warriors, poets, leaders, and everyday people like you and me. And you have tools. You have community. You have daily Stoic habits, right here, reminding you that each moment is a chance to return to your highest self. So where do you go from here? Not to a perfect life, not to a stress-free job, but to a better one, a truer one, a more resilient one. One where your peace doesn't depend on outcomes, where your worth isn't tied to performance, where your values guide your decisions even when it's hard. Here's how you begin, or continue. Start each morning with a few quiet minutes and a guiding question. Who do I want to be today? Throughout the day, pause, breathe. Ask, is this within my control? At night, reflect. Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. And most of all, keep going. Because the more you live this way, the more you realize it was never about the job. It was about the person you become through the job. Thank you for joining me on this journey into Stoicism and modern work life. If this video resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe to Daily Stoic Habits, and share it with someone who might need a little more calm, clarity, and courage in their daily grind. And remember, while you can't control what happens next week or next quarter, you can control how you show up for it. And that's where your power lives.